Greetings, Otaku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all yet again another Arrow episode review right here on Otaku Assemble. Weekly, as always, I'm here to bring you the latest in this week's Arrow episode review, and this is my review of Season 1, Episode 15, entitled Dodger. Now, general thoughts on this week's episode. I thought it was a good episode, and I especially liked the way that they were able to incorporate and to manage all of the stories in this week's episode. I felt like they actually covered a lot of ground just in one week, just in one episode. So, first thing I want to talk about with this review is the flashback for this week's episode. First off, I thought it was a really good idea to have a very minimalized flashback, and what I mean is, I think throughout the whole episode we only flashbacked, I think, 3 times, and each time was only for a minute or 2. There was not a lot of time spent on the island in this week's episode, and that was really good, because we spent the majority of last week's episode on the island. So I thought that was really well done. Also, I like that while it wasn't as big of an event as what happened in last week's episode, you know, the lesson that Oliver had to learn in this week's flashback, you know, and actually it's a lesson that's already been taught to him, but now we start seeing Oliver incorporate things, and that's when he runs into the guy on the island who's asking for his help, and Oliver chooses to leave him instead of helping him. And the lesson is that, the lesson, and it's a pretty harsh one, but it's pretty much what Yao Fei told him, and then what was later echoed by Slade, is that, you know, you can't be too trusting. You have to do whatever you have to do to survive. Not, like I said, that's very harsh and it's very cold, but at the same time, consider this. You know, because I asked myself, it's like, did I agree with Oliver's decision to leave the guy? Well, I agreed with it, and I'll tell you why. You got to remember, Oliver didn't go back to that cave for himself. He went back for Slade. He went back because Slade was injured and needed help. If Oliver would have gotten captured, or if Oliver would have gotten killed, Slade would have died. Oliver chose not to help that person because A, he couldn't allow himself to be too naive. Why? Because we've seen where his naivety has gotten him on the island, and every time it's always come back to bite him in the ass. So there's that. But once again, you have to consider, Oliver was not doing that for himself. He was doing it for Slade. If something had happened to Oliver, if the guy had set him up, or if the guy had, you know, him helping the guy out would have, you know, given away his position or something like that. If Oliver would not have made it back to the plane, Slade would have died. Period. So yes, Oliver made a choice, but not just to save himself. He also made that choice in order to save Slade. So yeah, from that perspective, I did agree with Oliver's choice. Now, jumping into what occurred in the present in this week's episode, first thing I want to mention, Oliver and Diggle's dates. First off, I thought it was fucking awesome how, you know, just the banter between Oliver, Diggle, and Felicity when they were in the diner, and, you know, when Oliver's like, yo, just go ahead and ask, when he was talking about Diggle and his sister-in-law, it's like, just go ahead and ask her out. He's like, I'll do that when you ask out, I keep forgetting the new detective's name. I keep forgetting her name. But yeah, so, and then Oliver's like, all right, cool, fine. You know, we'll both go on our respective dates and do that stuff. And the reason why I liked it, it wasn't, because okay, you all have heard me discuss how a lot of times in these type of shows, especially when it comes to superhero stories and stuff like that, the romance is always forced. Just off the top of my head, if you go back to my thoughts on, I believe it was episode 4, An Innocent Man, when they did all the love triangle stuff, all of that was forced. You see what I'm saying? Whereas with this, it's not that these, you know, dates were forced or anything, but it's that the idea is you have 2 heroes who are making a pact with each other that they will take the time out to date their respective love interests. That's different, because because it's kind of like the heroes are making the attempt to do something normal or to do something that they've always wanted to do, but work always got in the way. And it's easy for like one hero to come up with an excuse, but when you have the other one kind of, you know, coin checking him, if you will, kind of telling him, it's like, hey man, you know, I'll go ahead and I'll do it if you do yours. You see what I'm saying? That mutual agreement. It's like, all right, you know, kind of like a bet almost. It's like, all right, I'll ask so and so out if you ask yours out. Okay, yeah, let's do that. So I don't know, I just thought it was funny. And but that actually became very important, especially Oliver's date, because we find out at the end of the episode that his new love interest has actually been recruited by Sergeant Lance to do the hood investigation. So now Oliver finds himself in a very weird predicament, because on the one hand he's dating the detective, but I think Oliver's also going to be a mole and to use her to get information on the investigation to see how close they are to him, but also probably potentially throwing him off his own trail. So like I said, that puts Oliver in a very interesting position, and I want to see how that's going to work out. However, I'm making a call on this right here and now. Not so much because I know the mythology, but also because I can just see this train wreck coming. Oliver and the detective, it's not going to happen. It's not going to work out. And I don't know if that's going to happen when she finds out that he's the hood, or if when he feels that she's getting too close, he's going to break it off with her. I don't know. Either way, I do not see that working out. And it's a shame, because I actually like that pairing better than him and Laurel. And that's not to say that I don't like the whole Green Arrow, Black Canary relationship. I do. It's actually one of my favorite. Green Arrow and Black Canary are actually one of my favorite, I would probably say in the top 5 of my favorite couples in comic books, period. So I do like the pairing, but you got to understand where the show is right now in that respective mythology. You know, this is the beginning of Arrow, and Laurel isn't even Black Canary yet. What I'm saying is I don't like their pairing as of right now. You know, maybe 2 or 3 seasons down the line, maybe, but not right now. But since we brought up Laurel, and since we're talking about relationships, let's talk about the introduction of Roy Harper, the real Speedy. Roy gets introduced in this week's episode, which, for the record, that actor, pitch perfect. Looks just like him. Looks just like him. I was like, damn. So we get introduced to Roy in this week's episode, and then, of course, I get the feeling that they're going to try to set something up between him and Thea, especially when Thea fell for his sob story about, you know, Roy's mom being on Vertical and all that jazz. What I'm saying, though, is the fact that Roy, first off, robbed Thea, then was able to con her as well as the rest of the police officers with a sob story, and then even returned the purse and told her not to fall for the sob story after she tracked him down. What I'm saying is Thea has fallen for the classic old bad boy, misunderstood, mysterious background thing. You see what I'm saying? She's intrigued by Roy. And because she's intrigued by him, she will keep knocking on that door, even if he's not interested in her. But Roy's going to play the game where he's going to give her the breadcrumbs little by little. Never letting her in completely, but just giving her enough slack to keep her on the line. You know, it's just like when you're fishing. When you're fishing and you get a bite, you got to let that hook set in. You don't just immediately reel in that fish. You got to give them slack and reel them in. Give them slack, reel them in little by little. You let that hook sit in before you get their ass out of the water. So I think that's what Roy's going to do with Thea. He's going to play the game. But I like what they've done with him so far, and I especially like how they introduce Roy being the criminal, so that we can see his character progression when if he does, I'm hoping he does. Why else would you introduce him in the series? But when Roy eventually becomes Speedy, I like the fact that they introduced him as a criminal. Same way how they introduced Speedy in Smallville. Introduced him as a criminal, somebody who does need help. That way, once they get the help from their mentor, whether it be Thea, whether it be Laurel, or whether it be Oliver himself, we can see his character progression from who he is now to the hero he'll become. So they've already done a good job setting that up. And I think the final thing I want to talk about on in this review is Moira. Now, Moira is she's finally gotten to the point now where she's trying to get up from under the organization's thumb. And she's brought in a colleague of both her and Walter, and it seems like she's going to use him. We know she used him to get in contact with other people, and we saw at the end of the episode, she actually went and enlisted China White. And I think she's hiring the Triad to take out Malcolm. Was that his name? Tommy's dad? I think that's his name. Anyway, but she's hiring the Triad to try to take him out. So we see that Moira is trying to get up out of the organization's thumb, both politically, but also by force. Now, I don't know how this is going to fare, but we do know, or at least I'm assuming, nothing can happen to Tommy's dad before she gets Walter. Especially if he's the only one who knows where Walter is. She kills him, that secret dies with him. So, I don't know if Moira is going to use the Triad to pressure him, but she can't kill him until she gets Walter. Especially if he finds out that she's the one who did it, he'll kill Walter. So, Moira has to be very careful with that line. Also, I don't know how she's going to be able to pull it off to where there won't be any type of retaliation from the organization. Especially whoever the top dog is. I mean, I don't know. I also get the feeling that Robert tried pulling that, which is why he was killed. Because Moira's colleague mentioned, he hinted at that's why Robert might have been killed, because he tried to get out. So I don't know. I like the fact that Moira is finally deciding to do that, and that she's not letting herself become a victim anymore. You know, she's kind of taking this situation into her own hands now, and all it took was Oliver to threaten her in last week's episode to bring that about. I like the fact that Moira, long story short, she's not fucking around anymore, and I like that. And I like that she's finally taking charge of this thing. I just don't know if she's planned it all out, and if she's really thought this thing through, because like I said, as I mentioned before, Walter is in a very vulnerable position, and any transgression she takes against Tommy's dad or that organization puts Walter in jeopardy. So she needs to get Walter first before she makes her move. So, all in all, that's going to do it for this week's Arrow review. In the comments below, let me know your thoughts on this week's episode, as well as some of your responses to some of the theories I brought up in this review. Later this week, and keep an eye out for my discussion of the week. I'm actually going to record that right after I end this video, so that'll be out probably tomorrow. And I'm not sure if I'll be able to put out any more videos before the weekend's out, but we'll see. And with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, reminding you all once again, Totems Issue 1 now on sale. Links are in the description box below. And this is Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, signing off. And until next time, peace.